Hi, welcome to The Witch in the Woods, and today we're going to talk about all things mystical and magical with a huge dollop of unverified personal gnosis. So grab yourselves a cup of coffee and do remember not to take anything I say as gospel, because we're all different. So this is a personal perspective on the craft and certain aspects of paganism. So grab yourselves a drink and let's get on it. So I thought it would be fun to get to a few questions so I can meet subscribers, because most of the time I don't really know who you are. I don't know what makes you tick. So also what I'd like to say is I would like to hear your answers to these questions too. So if there's anything you would like to sort of pipe up and comment on, that would be really interesting to me as well. So I asked a few people if they had any questions. Thank you to those who replied, and I am going to attempt to answer your questions to the best of my ability. So straight up, Alemski asked a question. Thank you for your question. And she asked, most people have phones. I have to wiggle them out of my laptop quite often, otherwise it'll all sort of turn itself off. So Lemsky asked, I would like to know about your personal journey as a witch. How did it come about? Is there a history of witchcraft in your family? I'd also like to know about your painting. Do you regularly incorporate painting into your spiritual crafts? Well, that's an interesting question, and one that I found quite hard to answer, to be honest. I found myself making notes about this. I thought I could answer it off the top of my head. When I sat down and tried to think it through, I thought, right, I'm really going to have to put this into some order. And then I went through my notes and I went, I'm going to edit that out, I'm going to edit that out, I'm going to edit that bit out, and I'm not going to tell you about that on the World Wide Web either, because it's a very personal journey. A lot of it might sound quite bizarre. It could sound taken in the wrong context. It could sound ludicrous. So it's very difficult to talk about yourself and your own personal mystic experiences, isn't it? So the easiest part to answer is, are my parents magical? Are they from witchcraft tribe? I nearly said no, I'm not from a witchcraft tribe, unfortunately. No, like most people, I am not a hereditary witch. My parents, middle of the road Christians, don't really practice, don't really believe, just right Christian on a census, Church of England. Now my dad, much as he wouldn't really want to admit it, I think is kind of an agnostic. He's not entirely sure whether you can prove there's a God or any kind of divinity or spirit, or whether you can't prove that there's a God. So he's sort of in between, middle of the road. I think he'd like to believe that there's a higher power, but it's not something he feels comfortable in talking about lots. My mum is a complete atheist. She cannot believe in any kind of spiritual beings or divinity, and she is a little bit sort of derogative about the whole mystical hoo-ha. And her point being that she is worried that people can get swept up in hysteria, swept up into some kind of cult-like devotion. She worries about anyone who wants to give their own personal power to a guru. And I think, we're going to be honest, this is because of her upbringing in Nazi Germany. Now that's a heavy thing to throw in there, isn't it? But she did see people sweep up in some kind of nationalistic passion and supernatural kind of I think she was afraid of that power that somebody could have over masses of people. And I think it's a fair point. I think from her I have kind of adopted a healthy cynicism of somebody who comes to me saying they have the answer, or setting themselves up in that position of power. So no, I came from a very sort of atheist background, and I'm kind of the odd one out in the family. But on my own personal journey, when I was very young, I had a belief, I would say, in fairy beings and in spiritual beings. I had things that led me to believe that there was a world outside the physical world. In fact, somebody reminded me of this story the other night, and this is not one I mind sharing. There are a lot that will sound absolutely stupid if you try to put them out to the world on the World Wide Web. But this one happened. I was 5, a child, a little kid in my school who had a few sort of behavioural problems, threw a stone at my head. I was 5 years old and we were standing in the woods around the back of my house. And when he threw this stone, I knew in that split second that it was either going to or not going to kill me. It had the potential to, well, in my little childish imagination maybe, to actually kill me. So, that's nothing that was consciously in my mind. It was just a split second decision of I might die. What happened was that time slowed down and I shot out of my body, and I was watching the whole proceedings from somewhere over my right shoulder. So I knew I was not in my body. But it wasn't just that, it's that time actually slowed down. And this stone, it flew through the air really slowly, and it hit me on the forehead round about the third eye. And I think if you look sometimes you can see a bit of a dint here. So I don't quite know if he damaged anything, but to me it was a very scary experience. And when the stone hit my forehead, something in me went, oh, I'm not dead. And I screamed and I shot back into my body. I know it sounds silly to actually try and convey this in words. I did not tell that story very well. But from that experience I kind of know that there was something beside my physical body that was a spirit that had left my physical body in that instant and then got back into my physical body when the danger had passed. So that was kind of a foundation in my life that made me believe that there is more than just a physical body. I don't know if you've ever had the flying dream, where you are flying over houses and it is also real, and your spirit has left your body and you can see, and you can look down, you know where you are, but you're flying. I think that's the closest a lot of people come to that leaving the body experience. So anyway, this is going to be a very long story, and I want to edit quite a lot of it out, to be honest. Alright, so there were other strange experiences in my life, one of which was seeing ghosts. I was with friends, she was also quite psychic. She had a haunted house, she was telling me about the bizarre things that would happen in her house, like ornaments that would turn themselves around. Nobody was in the house and you could hear footsteps running up the stairs. So we shared these experiences, and one night we went out to play hide and seek in an abbey with our boyfriends, and we saw a ghost. So that was another mystical experience that was beyond the norm, that was beyond the established world point of view. So there were many stories like that, many bizarre little things that made me believe in spirit, in the spiritual world. and in psychic senses. So, how I came to witchcraft was my friends. Are you sitting down again? Good boy. Should we ignore that cat at the window? Just one moment, please. I needed that break, it was getting quite heavy, this tale. Okay, so my friend that I saw a ghost with, we were both into sort of romantic and magical things, and this was partly to do with the whole Robin of Sherwood kind of series that came on TV when we were young. And it hit us at that time of puberty, when it is very important actually that we can awaken a certain... Puberty is a very powerful time, it can awaken all sorts of things in you. So anyway, at this time of life we kind of started talking about witchcraft and mystical things. And what happened was, she bought me a book on pagan rituals, and then I bought her the same book back. And there was a initiation ceremony in this book to become a witch. So what we ended up doing was we performed the ritual, and we kind of dedicated ourselves to becoming a witch, to taking that seriously and to a path of witchcraft. At the end of that ceremony, that dedication, we actually got signs in the candles, in the candlelight, that kind of spoke to us as though it had been accepted. But to me this was never a full... I dedicated myself, but I wanted someone else to take me in hand. I didn't want to be self-taught. So I looked for a teacher, I looked for a coven, and now I'm about 20 and I'm at university. I've left home and I thought I really want somebody to learn from. So I looked at covens, and there was something about them that never really gelled with me, and I just didn't think that anything was quite right for what I wanted to take part in. And to me it did seem a little sort of like, this is a bit like a cult. I'm not sure if I want to step into this kind of in crowd kind of thing, or I'm not sure if they have got legitimate teaching to me. That's just somebody who I wouldn't trust to be traditional or an hereditary witch. It's just somebody who has started their own little group. But I'm sure they're out there, it's just that nobody I found fitted the bill. But I still wanted to find a teacher. So actually, in the end, I answered an advert in a magazine. And the magazine was called Kindred Spirit. And it was really quite popular. It's when it first started, it was an excellent magazine. It had some amazing, lovely articles, but after a while it just kind of, I don't know, I think it sold into other hands or something, and it became less of a really sort of whatever. I'm dissing a magazine here. Anyway, so I answered an advert in Kindred Spirit, and it was from a woman who advertised herself as a traditional seer in the Celtic Druidic tradition, and she was called Ceridwen. So I actually wrote to her, and she was a lovely lady, and she said, I will teach you, and you can give me a donation of whatever you can afford. So I knew kind of that she wasn't in it for the money, because there's a lot of that as well. So I gave her very little considering what she gave to me. I gave her what I could, but you know, I couldn't really afford to give her much. But she sent me correspondence for about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years. And so we chatted through letter, and she would give me spells and rituals and path working and guided meditation, and she taught me quite a lot. But there comes a point where you have to move on and you have to find other teachers as well. So I kind of felt that that period of my life was over. So I did find a teacher, but I would be wrong to not mention that I was also learning a lot from books at this time. I was led to books as well. The book that you walk into a bookshop and the book literally falls off the shelf into your hand, that is the book you want. So there was a lot of that. Don't diss anything that you can pick up from other teachers, maybe people who are publishing their work. So that did literally happen to me. A book fell into my hands, and it was a brilliant book. Well, 2 books in the end. And then there were other teachers, so I was learning about a particular path, which was more Celtic, Druidic witchcraft, and reading everything I could in those subjects. So that was a long explanation, and I hope that answered the first part of your question. To the other part of your question, I'm just going to have a break. So as for the other part of your question, incorporating art and creativity into my practice, yes, I do. It's something I used to do a lot more. When I was at university, I was studying English and art and graphic design and drama. I was doing a whole combined studies degree, which I loved because it gave me a little bit this and then a little bit of that, and it was all complementary. And as part of this degree, especially for the English and the creative writing side, we were supposed to keep a journal. And this was our homework, and it was really good fun at the end of it. I totally recommend it. And in this journal I would put little bits of art, little poems, little bits of writing, some stories, and I was encouraged to do this. I was encouraged to be goddamn creative in that book. And once you do that, you start tapping into the right side of your brain, and you allow that to sort of express itself. And that is a very powerful side of our brain that we don't really use enough in our culture. So spirit tends to express itself through symbols. It does not express itself in a logical fashion. The best way to talk with spirit is symbolically, and it's the best way spirit will talk to you. So once you start exploring all sorts of symbols, you do awaken a spiritual side of your nature that we have not really been encouraged to use in our education. So yes, I did. I don't use it half as much as I should do. I did go through a phase in a particular hard time of my life a few years ago of making tarot cards, making my own set of oracle cards, and trying to express certain emotions through a symbol, but particularly a oracle card symbol. And that's a great exercise, I think. So yes, I would encourage that entirely. I have waffled on for ages on the first question, so I will get on to the next question. Thank you for asking that. That was very interesting to talk about. I hope I haven't gone on too long. Thank you. So great. So Isabella asks, I have a few questions. Forgive me if they aren't appropriate. They're appropriate. How to find out which path to follow, or how you found out. and your thoughts on the many changes concerning witchcraft and Neopaganism. The second half of the question is quite interesting. I'm not sure. I will attempt to answer that, but it's a little difficult because I wasn't brought into this through traditional witchcraft. So, the first part of the question, how to find out which path to follow, or how I found out. Well, how I found out was through a teacher. There is a saying that I wanted to bring into this, is that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And the meaning of that is, I didn't consciously go out and look for Celtic, Druidic and fairy lore. But that's what was brought into my sphere, and that's what my interests were. And I did find the teacher who taught me a great deal, who was from a family that had a long history of mysticism. So they were mystics rather than traditional witches, as far as I can figure out. How do you find out? I think you have to kind of approach the ancestors first, to approach the gods. This was a conversation I was having on a page the other day, talking about heathenism. So for me, I am not drawn to Italian witchcraft because I don't have that culture, I don't have that hereditary knowledge, I'm not in that society. If you are Italian, then you may be drawn to Italian witchcraft. Also, there are trends, and I think they're kind of trends in the collective psyche. And so that will often speak to you as well. So don't be afraid to pick up on something that is going around, that is big in the scene or big in the culture at the time. Because I do believe that you find what you're looking for, or what you're looking for finds you one way or another. So I would say work with your ancestors and work with the land. It's easy in Britain. We work with British and Celtic witchcraft. As I say, that's a place to start. But from there on, you can then go on and learn and expand and pick up other things. But for a basis, working with your own ancestry and working with your own stories that you were brought up with, your own stories in your life as well. Because I think you know what you're drawn to, you know who's speaking to you, you know which things are firing up your spirits and fire you with enthusiasm. So definitely follow that, take it and run with it, as we say. Your second part of your question, your thoughts on the many changes concerning witchcraft and Neopaganism. Okay, this is a biggie, isn't it? Because myself, like most people, come to witchcraft through Neopaganism. For me, I would say that this is the culture we're living in. Not many people are traditional witches. Not many people are going to be fortunate enough to know a coven in their area, or to know people who have been using witchcraft for generations. Much of what we are going to come by is Neopaganism. It's going to come through culture, and it's going to come through books. It's going to come through teachers from all walks of life. I don't mind Neopaganism. Obviously, Gerard Gardner took witchcraft and he wanted to make it palatable. He wanted to make it acceptable to society. And so he he sold it, he introduced it to the world as a fluffy, green, earth-centred religion, earth-centred spirituality, and it worked. And people loved that because it is what was missing from our lives. We celebrated the seasons, but we had it under the guise of Christianity. We wanted to get back to understanding this wheel of the year, understanding why we were celebrating certain things in certain ways. So there was some kind of debate about, you know, some people wanted to take it some way, another way. Gerard Gardner wanted to take it to the fluffy, earth-centred religion, and that's what caught on. The only drawback in that is that it becomes trendy, it becomes a fashion and a fad, and a lot of what is taken and sold as a fad becomes misleading, and so it's not the best way to learn, it's not the best people to learn from. So things go around that are kind of superficial. I've not greatly watched TikToks, but things like TikToks, things like Instagram posts, things like YouTube channels, you've got to kind of take everything with a pinch of salt, because there are so many different voices out there that you've got to decide who you trust and who you don't. So it can become a fad. A fad is not always a traditional teacher, it's just a fashion that's gone viral, really. So I would say that was a total disadvantage, but I don't really have anything against Neopaganism. It is taking what we've got and working with it. I've said before about my sort of things that get my goat, like everybody says Beltane's a fire festival, so we're going to run around in red body paint. I'm sorry, but Beltane is green. We talk about the green man, we talk about the greening of the earth. It has nothing to do with the colour reds. It is the wrong colour, the wrong symbolism for the wrong festival, and that's what I mean about fashions and fads. So, you know, don't join the crowds, I think, as well. There's a lot of people who you kind of think this is just an ego trip, guys, and I want to find something deeper, and I think you trust your instinct on that. You can discern which is a lot of hot air and what has genuine historical context. So I hope that answered that question as well. And as I say, please let us know in the comments below what your answers to these questions would be, because it shouldn't just be a one-way conversation, and I would quite like to know what the debate is about here, you know. So thanks for that question. Excuse my voice, I am talking so much, I'm talking myself hoarse. So I'm getting a bit croaky, excuse that. Okay, so next question. Love this name, Cataphractus. Cataphractus asks, I would really appreciate Cataphractus asks, would really appreciate hearing advice on a daily or weekly routine of deity or ancestor veneration or regular worship schedule for a pagan reconstructionist struggling to keep up. I totally agree with the struggling to keep up there. I've got to admit, since I have started making videos, I find that I am more of a YouTube witch than a practicing witch these days, because every festival we come to, 90% of my time is making a video about it, and it takes up a lot of time, and it doesn't leave a lot of time to practice, and it's kind of a bit of a bone to me, that one, is that I'm no longer actually walking my talk. So yeah, struggling to keep up. making time every day for some kind of veneration or spiritual side of life. So a daily or weekly routine. Well, obviously a daily routine is something that you would like to incorporate in a small way into your day without a lot of effort, without a lot of the paraphernalia and things like that. So I think this is a really good way of bringing spirit into your life, and the easiest way of doing some kind of daily devotional is to have an altar and to do something like light a candle on that altar or light some incense on the altar and just daily spend a few minutes. It's not necessary though to have a daily practice, and I think it's fine to have a weekly or even a monthly practice. When it comes to spell work, hello Archie, spell work is quite exhausting. Spell work takes a lot of energy out of you. So I think it's fine not to feel guilty if you're not doing spells every week or even every month. Spell work can take days to recover from. And so I wouldn't say that, you know, you really need to do a spell each month. Personally, I keep it low-key, and I'm glad that you mentioned ancestor veneration, because this is where I tend to put most of my dedication, my daily practice, and it's small key, and it's just worship by my hearth, or worship. It's a strange word. I'm not sure about the word worship. It kind of has connotations to me that make me feel a bit cringy. So veneration is a good word. And I would feed my hearth spirits. Now this is a very traditional way of honouring your ancestors, and it only takes a few minutes. And the idea of feeding the spirits is very ancient. It keeps the spirits happy. It stops those hungry spirits from wreaking havoc in your life. So, something like that. If you haven't got a hearth, not everybody has hearth, I'm sure there's a spot in your home that you consider sacred or put aside. It doesn't matter. I don't think the spirits matter, you know, really care where you put an offering, if you are putting an offering there anyway. You are so hairy. Good. Thanks, babe. So anyway, if you want to do weekly or daily dedications, yes, that's great. Have an altar, place some objects there for the gods, for your ancestors. But I would say that one of the most important things to do as a witch is to acknowledge the phases of the moon, specifically the full moon. So I would say that all that really matters to me is that I have an awareness of when the full moon is, and I use that full moon and I align the rhythms of my body to the rhythms of the moon. A good way of doing this is moon bathing, and this awakens your intuition, this awakens dreams in you, and it connects to the magic of the moon. So you can just stand in the moonlight occasionally if you want to make moon water. That is a very good way of honouring that full moon as well. Some people honour the new moon and the full moon, so that's an alternative. Myself, I just honour the full moon, and I feel wrong if I haven't. I feel all out of sorts if I don't know what the moon phase is at that current time. So that is a great way just to honour the spirit, honour the goddess, honour the gods, and of course spending time in nature is a great way to do that too. So regular walks, keeping in touch with what's going on in the natural world, what season we're in, And so when you mention a pagan reconstructionist as well, we're all pagan reconstructionists to some extent. And so whatever really appeals to you, whatever could... I mean, these days we tend to pull a daily card, and that is our worship, that is our connection to spirit. So pulling a card in the morning, working with a crystal, taking a crystal with you in your pocket or something. I mean, we are reconstructing whatever speaks to us in this day and age, and these tend to be popular and they tend to work. So I hope that answered that question for you. Don't jump on the lights, Archie. Archie, you bad boy. I can see him looking at it going, I'll just jump up there. So I hope that answered your question. I did my best for that one. I don't have the definitive answer for everything. So this is just my own personal experience. But thank you for the question, very interesting subject. Okay, so the last question was, Whitney's Mystical Shop asked, I'd love to know more about deities. If you ever doubted yourself working with them, like you were making it up but it felt so real, how you eased into that. So that's a brilliant question. Is that back? I might have jiggled the camera there. Yeah, sorry, the battery dies. I've talked so much. Where was I? So, yes, of course I have doubted working with deities. When you're working with deities, you can only ever work with your intuition. It's not as if you get some vision standing in your room saying, and yea, I say to thee, so and so and so and so. You kind of got to eke out small messages. You've got to kind of explore unexplored territory. You've got to go with the flow of your imagination. And this is true especially if you're doing sort of guided meditations, shamanic journeying. I've gone through quite a lot of shamanic journeys going, I'm making this up, what am I doing, why am I here, what am I telling myself right now? Can I trust this crap? So that to me can be quite intense in a shamanic journey. You have to take it all with a pinch of salt. So what I call this is not collapsing the wave function. Now this is a kind of reference to quantum mechanics, and the idea is that with light they could not decide if light was a wave or a particle, and it seemed that if you're observing and looking for a particle, light appeared as a particle. If you were looking and observing for a wave, light appeared as wave. And our logic minds could not get around the fact that it could be one thing and another thing, because we wanted to put everything in a little box that said, this is how it is. So when working with any deities, you've got to allow it to be and not be. You've got to allow it to tell you what is going on and what messages you need to hear, and you have to be able to allow it to be absolute bollocks and not something that you should take, too seriously. So easing into that, not to go around saying I am the goddess Morrigan, or I am working, with this spirit, and not to go around denying your experiences too. So it's best not to, I'm not explaining that. Some people might say, oh yes, I've got a great line to this goddess, and you know, she tells me everything, and I don't trust those people. I think they maybe have lost themselves a little in that aggrandizement. I think maybe they've lost themselves a bit in their own grandeur and in their own ego trip, and that is a danger too. And to absolutely deny it and to hide all that light under a bushel is not the answer either. So this is why I think it's best to be quiet about your experiences, just to trust your own heart and your own inner voice, but not necessarily go around as though you have got some great connection to some deity that makes you better than everybody else. Because it can sort of fill your head with nonsense. It's easy to lose perspective in that way. So yes, it's a brilliant question. Yes, you can lose yourself. You can not trust what's being given to you, and you can also trust what's being given to you. So, oh gosh, that's so hard to explain. It can be this and it can be that. Just walk the centre path, and sort of work with that. Work with your intuition. Write down anything. It helps to sort out anything you may be receiving. It helps to separate the wheat from the chaff. Honour those goddesses, work with those goddesses or gods, trust in your experiences with that deity, but don't take it as read, don't take it as creed, take it all with a healthy dose of self-power. Have the ability to say, okay, that's enough of that, you know, let's just draw a line here and keep your feet on the ground, you know, keep in touch with reality. And that's why I think journaling is great and working with creativity is great, because it gives you a channel that you can express that. But it's just creativity, it's just your expression, it's just you working something out that has great archetypal energy, without feeling that you're being overwhelmed by it. So I hope that was some kind of answer to that question, which is quite a deep question, and one that, you know, I think everybody wonders at one point or another. So thank you to everybody who asked questions. As I say, I would love to get that discussion going. If you've got your answers to those questions too, then, you know, that's really interesting to talk about it amongst ourselves. I have talked myself hoarse. I really could go on and on and on, because, you know, I do waffle. But I hope you really got something out of that, and thank you for listening. Thank you for the questions. It was most interesting for me, and yeah, would maybe do this again. And I wouldn't dare do a bit alive. It's a bit scary. I feel like I would be sat there on my own talking to nobody. But, you know, live would be nice because you would get the interaction, people asking questions. So let me know if you want to do that, but I'm not sure I've got enough sort of support behind me to get the whole conversation going, unless it was carefully planned. So yeah, that's a bit scary to me, especially because I say a lot, and I don't want to sit there on telly, on a screen going I don't have an answer for that. So anyway, cheers guys, thanks for watching, thanks for your questions, and I hope to speak to you all again soon. Cheers, see ya.